The Scared Crows is a pretty decent Betty Boop cartoon. This was released originally in 1939. It's directed by Dave Fleischer and Dave Tendler and stars Margie Hines as Betty Boop. And look out for a mistake with something Betty Boop says. She says at one point to the crow, "Why didn't you go where you were looking?" Where, of course, the expression is, "Why didn't you look where you were going?" I did actually Google it in case some parts of the world said it that way. Google gave me no results, so I'm assuming it is genuinely just an error with either the recording or with the script. I'm not entirely sure, but other than that, it's pretty fabulous. It's actually a Betty Boop and Pudgy cartoon, Pudgy being her adorable little dog, and they're out in the garden, and then these crows come along and get in the way. So Pudgy actually gets this scarecrow and drags it across to Betty Boop, and she puts the scarecrow up, and the crows all fly away in fear. But one crow, who wasn't looking where he was going, ended up getting an injury, and Betty Boop ran to the crow's rescue and looked after the crow. But then things don't necessarily go according to plan, and I'll talk more about that with a spoiler warning in a moment. This is not at all what I expected it to be like. I assumed it would just be about Betty Boop gardening with a bunch of crows, but it's much more developed than that. It's a lot more going on, and it's a very pleasing, satisfying, somewhat unpredictable narrative. The animation quality is great. Betty Boop looks quite different because she's wearing coveralls or dungarees or something, and we're used to seeing her dressing in, well, little dresses. So it's certainly quite different, and Pudgy is just so cute. And I love the animation of the crows, particularly when there are a lot of them on the screen at any one time, because they just look majestic and terrifying at the same time. And I thought that worked really well. The pacing was great. Straight away, we're in the garden with Betty Boop. Everything is kicking off immediately, and things definitely develop at a pretty steady rate. And I rather enjoyed it. I have no complaints at all. And the animation style is definitely the usual quality we can expect from Fleischer Studios. So I guess I'll explain just with a tiny bit more detail what happens and why it becomes really interesting. So what happens? Big spoilers. Betty Boop takes the crow in, and the crows all end up gathering in her house. And I love that. I hadn't expected any of this to take place indoors, but to have them all interacting with her home and her furnishings, and Pudgy getting in the way of the crows, and the crows causing problems. I just thought it was a really nice way to take it, and something that I hadn't expected just purely based on the title in the opening scene. And it worked very well. Very well written, well animated story with some really adorable characters, namely Pudgy. But the crows looked wonderful as well. And the scarecrow. I loved the design of the scarecrow too. I don't know if it would ever be one of my all time favourite Betty Boop cartoons. Pretty sure it wouldn't be. But nevertheless, I really enjoyed it. If you're a fan of Betty Boop, then I definitely recommend The Scared Crows.